Hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Kate, and here on my channel I talk about true crime stories. Please remember to show your support by liking this video, subscribing to my channel, and hitting the notification bell so that you never miss out on any of my future videos or podcasts. I do podcasts as well. Also, I have teamed up with a brand. So I'm just going to play a short skit about the brand before we jump into today's story. Hey guys, just popping in here real quick to let you know about a brand that I have teamed up with. They are called Twisted Thread and they are based here in New Zealand. They are awesome. Honestly, they sent me this t-shirt and I love it. They are passionate about music, like metal and rock, just like me, but they also stock hip-hop shirts and merchandise. Their shirts are of a high quality and they sell a range of band t-shirts and underground streetwear brands. And unlike a lot of other companies who, they sell cheap knockoffs, these guys completely authentic, and it really does show in the quality of their prints, like the t-shirt I am wearing. Like, I love this. Look at this color. It's amazing, right? It's great. I love it so much. Best part, I've got a 10% discount for my Kiwi viewers. There you go. You're welcome, guys. Just use my promo code KateSharon_truecrime at checkout and you can pick yourself up an awesome t-shirt or three. Twisted Thread tees are honestly so comfortable. I feel so comfy in this shirt and a great fit for everyone. I absolutely love the shirt that I have been gifted. And like I said, the colors do really pop. It is awesome. Also, their tees are made from 100% cotton, which makes it really, really airy and breezy and so comfy. So head over to their website at www.twistedthread.co.nz and don't forget to use my promo code KateSharon_truecrime at checkout. Now back to the video. Hello again. Thank you so much for being here with me. Make sure to get cozy, grab a snack, and let's dive into another story. Okay, so today I am going to be talking about Theodore Coneys. He was a very interesting fella. It's quite a tragic story, actually. So I'm going to call him Ted because Theodore, Ted, same thing. I actually called my cat Ted. Theodore. Yeah. Anyway, so he's going to be called Ted. So Ted was born in 1882 into a family of farmers who were facing really bad financial difficulties. And they worked their butts off. They were such hard workers, but they never seemed to have enough money for food. Sadly, Ted was really sick. He had very little strength and vitality, and at one point, a doctor, after assessing his condition, grimly predicted that he may not survive past the age of 18, which cast a long shadow over his early years. So as a result of his fragile health, Ted was unable to complete his education, and this left him feeling really disconnected from the other kids at school. He was also bullied. These kids made fun of him because he wasn't able to run around like the rest of them, and he was a bit odd and small, so they gave him a bit of grief. This inability to finish school not only diminished his opportunities, but they also contributed to a growing sense of frustration and resentment towards typical jobs that required physical stamina. And over the years, this struggle with his health, it became a major factor in his reluctance to seek work, basically, because most work back then for men, you did need to be able to lift heavy or move around quite a bit, and he just couldn't. So he struggled to get a job, and he ended up living on the streets. And for the majority of his adult life, Ted had drifted aimlessly through the harsh realities of his own existence, often resorting to stealing and begging. It's so sad, right? That kind of life. It's not even his fault. He was born with difficulties. It's not fair. So by the year 1941, Ted had reached the age of 59, yet he found himself still wandering the streets, still begging. This was in Denver, Colorado, and he didn't have a stable place to call home. His life was a constant cycle of searching for food and shelter. He was scavenging through bins and relying on charity of others. And back then it was hard because not many people actually had that much money. It was hard times. One fateful evening in September, as twilight settled over the city and the streets began to empty, Ted encountered a familiar figure. This was a frail old man called Philip Peters. Philip, like Ted, was no stranger to hardship and did not possess great wealth. However, he had a few coins in his pocket, and Ted heard the coins and, he's like, oh yeah, this guy, he might be able to help me. Ted, he was desperate, he was hungry, and he approached Philip with a sense of urgency. He was pleading. He begged this man to help him. Basically, he said, please, just a little something to tide me over. His voice, it barely even broke to a whisper. He was so weak and frail and hungry. He was so tired. He made it to 59. They said he probably wasn't going to make it to 18. So good on him for that. But Philip said that he could not help because his wife had actually broken her hip and she was in the hospital, and all the money that they had, it needed to go on her medications. But Ted, he's hungry, and he wasn't going to give up that easily. He heard those coins in his pocket. So he decided to secretly follow Philip home. Yeah, looked like he might have been planning to rob him. So over the following days, Ted, he watched Philip's house. He was taking note of everything. He was watching when he left. He was watching when he returned. He was watching what time he went to sleep. He was just getting an idea of when he could possibly sneak in. He timed his actions carefully so that he could avoid being noticed. And on one occasion, when Philip was out, Ted took the opportunity to enter the house. He made his way into a poorly locked door. So apparently this door lock wasn't that great, and he got in. And inside, Ted was pleasantly surprised to find an abundance of food and drinks stocked in the pantry. He hit the jackpot. That's what he thought. So he, helped himself to this food and drinks. And he kind of thought maybe Philip lied to him because he said he didn't have much money, but he's got all this food. So the reason that Philip had all this food and drink was because the neighbours were helping him. They were the ones that were bringing the food and drink. It wasn't because he had money, but Ted thought, he was lying to him. So inside this house, Ted's walking around. He's seeing what else he can take, things that could help him. And as he continued to search for additional supplies, his curiosity led him to the bathroom. It was there that he stumbled upon a peculiar feature. It was a small room nestled in the ceiling. So this room was tiny. It was about 68 centimetres tall at its highest point and 137 centimetres wide at its widest, making it very, very cramped. The space served as a sort of storage area rather than a usable room. And Ted noticed that a small trapdoor on the floor underneath the ceiling cavity, which allowed access to it. So with a bit of effort, someone could reach through this trapdoor to place or retrieve various items. The thought that an adult could manage to crawl through such a tiny opening seemed astonishing, and Ted couldn't help but be intrigued by the hidden potential that this room had to offer. Ted had actually slipped his tiny body into it. So he's up there now, and he reckons that he can hide up there long term. He felt a sense of freedom, knowing that he could remain unnoticed for as long as he wanted, only venturing out when he needed food and when no one was around. This became his routine. He would sneak out during the day while Philip was at the hospital with his wife. And throughout this time, Philip was, he's grieving his wife's absence. He's on his own at the house. And Ted, he's kind of up there, and Philip is completely oblivious. His days were marked by solitude, relieved only by the steady stream of neighbours who came to visit him. These kind-hearted individuals brought him delicious homemade pies, soups, and other comforting dishes to help support him during this difficult period, because usually his wife looked after him. As the days turned into weeks, Ted began to feel more at ease in his secret life. He grew very bold and he started to venture out even when Philip was home. Yeah, each time he slipped out, excitement mixed with nervousness went through him, and he relished the thrill of living so close to someone who remained completely unaware of his presence. Then, on the night of October the 17th, 1941, Philip, he was in bed. He's an older gentleman in his late 50s, and he was an old school teacher. So he was woken by the sound of like a faint but distinct sound coming from downstairs. His heart was pounding, and he instinctively reached for the cane that he kept by his bedside. And cautiously, he swung his legs over the edge of the bed, and he paused for a moment, just listening. What is that, he was thinking? This noise was persistent, and it was rustling now. It was getting louder. And so he's convinced that there's a burglar in his home. And he heads downstairs. So he's creeping down the stairs. It's dimly lit. He's kind of like listening in, wondering, is there someone in my home? He's got his cane. He's ready to hit someone if he has to. And as he reached the bottom of the staircase, he peered around the corner into his kitchen. And that's where he sees a man, a very thin man, quite scruffy looking, hunched over his refrigerator. His disheveled hair sticking out in all directions, just like munching on his food, basically. So he's going through all of his shelves, his fridge, everything. Philip felt like a rush of conflicting emotions. He should have been terrified, yet he couldn't help but feel like a bit of sympathy for this stranger who clearly needed help. Ted turned briefly, catching Philip's eye. Their gaze locked for a fleeting moment, and a silent understanding passed between them. A realization that desperation takes you into unexpected and strange places. It is unknown whether Philip recognized Ted, and he barely had time to swing his cane because Ted decided to attack first. This is when Ted quickly grabbed a cast iron utensil and he hit Philip over his head. He continued to hit Philip over and over and over until he was dead. Then Ted scurried back up to his hidden spot. Horrible. The next morning, a neighbour went over to his house, and after he didn't reply, they actually called the police. I know it sounds quite extreme to call the police just because your neighbour doesn't open the door, but apparently this was very out of character for him, and he was expecting people to pop over. When police arrived, they found his body in a pool of his own blood in his kitchen. How heartbreaking is this? And his wife's in the hospital right now. Also, the investigation showed that there were no signs of forced entry, so they kind of decided that they were going to close the case. They blamed it on an accidental fall. This baffles me, honestly, because this guy had been hit repeatedly. It wasn't just like a one blow from a fall. It wasn't an accident. It was clear. They just didn't want to work on the case. And a week after, his wife came home. She's on her own now, dealing with the grief. She was relieved to be home, but she's beside herself because now her husband's dead and killed in a really horrible way. And she had somebody help her. So she got herself a housekeeper. And this lady was called Maria. And she quickly became very invaluable. Both women were light sleepers, so when the night fell, they were acutely aware of every sound in that house. And as days passed, they began to notice strange noises coming from the first floor during the quiet hours of that night. There were soft thuds, whispers, and the creaking of floorboards. Initially, they dismissed the sounds as the house settling, or perhaps, it's the wind. Houses move. However, the strange occurrences escalated, and soon they spotted an eerie shadow darting across the walls in the dim light. Intrigued and a bit unnerved, they began to wonder, is there someone in this home? In a state of growing unease, they repeatedly called the police. They were convinced that intruders were in or around the house. And each time the officers arrived promptly, conducting thorough searches of the house and meticulously examining every single corner. Yet they could not find anyone or anything. Nothing was out of place. In their anxious moments, the women often found themselves peering into the bathroom, where the flickering light cast eerie shadows. They felt like something was going on in there. It was there that they first noticed the small hatch set high in the ceiling, leading to the small room above. The hatch, barely large enough for a child to squeeze through, seemed insignificant at the time. They had dismissed it. They felt like this space was just too small, too cramped. An adult could not fit up there. So the officers, they're confident that, there's no one in this house. And they leave. But the women, they kept on hearing sounds. They knew that somebody was in their home. They just didn't know where they were. So as the months went by, Mrs. Peters, she kept calling the police whenever she heard strange sounds. Unfortunately, they got sick of this and they stopped coming to help her. And people in the area started to gossip. They thought that maybe she'd lost her mind because of her husband's death and that she was probably imagining things. Mrs. Peters and the housekeeper, they couldn't take it anymore and they decided to up and leave. So they packed up and they moved out. And as time went by, the neighbours started to whisper again and they were thinking maybe the house was haunted because they saw things happening in there. Even the neighbourhood children were too scared to go near it, claiming they saw someone moving around inside. So they think it's haunted. So Ted found himself trapped in a cold, empty shell of the Peters house, a place that he had reluctantly called home since he had nowhere else to go. He stayed, and with each passing day, the worn floors and peeling wallpaper felt more like a prison than a refuge. When hunger gnawed at his insides, he would venture out into the streets and he would scavenge for scraps. Then on a quiet afternoon of July 30th, 1942, the stillness of the neighbourhood was disrupted by the presence of police. So police are patrolling the area, and as they glanced towards the Peters house, a flicker inside caught their attention. So the police were intrigued, and they approached this house. Without hesitation, they forced the door open, and inside, the atmosphere, it was thick with neglect. But before they could fully assess the situation, an unexpected movement drew their attention. A figure had darted across the room, purposeful and frantic, heading straight for the small bathroom, a futile attempt to escape from the approaching law enforcement. So in that tense moment, the officers, they heard an alarming sound, a loud, sharp click emanating from the ceiling hatch. It was a sound that signified more than just panic. It suggested a hidden existence, secrets lurking above, and an unsettling realization that this quiet house was anything but abandoned. And maybe Mrs. Peters, she wasn't crazy. There was someone there. There was someone living in her ceiling. The police burst into the cramped bathroom, and above them, the ceiling hatch was slightly ajar, with a pair of shoes dangling from the ceiling. So he's trying to get up there, but he's not quick enough. And they see his feet. His feet are hanging down. So Ted, clearly in distress, attempted to squeeze his way through this narrow passage, but he just wasn't quick enough. And without hesitation, the police, they just grabbed him. So they've grabbed his legs, and as he emerged from the hatch, the officers were met with the sight of Theodore. He was gaunt and visibly trembling with fear. He was genuinely scared and tiny and not well. His eyes were wide with panic, and his pale face bore the marks of a harrowing ordeal, revealing just how desperate he had been to escape. So at the police station, Ted confessed to everything. He told them that he killed Philip, that it wasn't an accident. He detailed how he had taken refuge in a tiny room in the ceiling, and he eventually admitted to how he killed Philip. His confession led to a trial, and ultimately Ted was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. So he passed away on May the 16th, 1967. He lived quite a long life, but during his time in prison, he found like a sense of stability. He was provided with meals, and he had a roof over his head. A stark contrast to the chaos of his past. He finally felt like he had a home, even though it was a prison. It still felt like it was his home. He never went hungry. This routine became his new normal, and he seemed to accept that this was all he truly needed. He just needed a roof and some food. I just wish that he hadn't have killed Philip. I feel like he didn't mean to. I feel like, because that was his only true crime, really. But it's horrible that Philip did die. Okay, we're going to leave it there. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments section below. And please don't forget to hit the like button, turn on the notifications button, and subscribe to my channel for more of my videos and my podcasts. Also, if you are listening via my podcast and would like to see the video, you can find me on YouTube. My name on YouTube is Kate Sharon True Crime. Still a reasonably new YouTuber. My channel is quite small, but I am getting there. Anyway, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with me. Have a wonderful day. Thanks, guys. Bye.